Welcome to the 12th episode of the Think Wildlife podcast. Today we have Akansha Tiwari. She's a wildlife filmmaker who has worked extensively with marine conservation.
So my name is Akansha and I'm a wildlife filmmaker and I work with conservation stories which focus on marine wildlife, but I also work with public policy.
What got you interested in ocean conservation?
Okay. Um, Ocean conservation was something that was at the back of my head since I was a child, but um, you know, when you research and you realize when you start making films that there is not enough representation of stories about the sea, because we don't have enough access to it, so we don't care about it as much. It's looked at as a distant problem or, only a scientist problem. So I thought that we should have more stories about the sea and the ocean and water bodies, and that's how it started.
One of your works was the film Tangled series. Talk us through it a bit. What was it about and what were your goals and what was your experience filming it?
Okay, so Tangle Seas started in 2019, and it was just something that came out of a conference that I attended in Goa, and the Sarpanch and everybody was talking about how marine debris and ghost nets and nets in particular are such a problem because you don't know how to dispose them. And they just told me, hey, why don't you consider making a film about this? Because there's nothing and then we researched and we realized there's nothing on this topic at all, and nothing in specifically. Whatever stories are there are probably related to Schedule One species that get entangled in it. There was nothing, and so far, according to our research, there still isn't some film or any content like that which is specifically dedicated to it. So that is how it started, and then we researched a lot. We filmed for 1.5 years, and then the pandemic happened. A lot of problems happened, but um, it was a process, and we still are doing an impact campaign with it after so many years. And there's still so much work to do, so many stakeholders to talk to. And when I started working on this, my goal was to just create awareness because there was nothing. When we go to the beach, we don't identify a fishing net as something alien to that environment. So I just wanted to make everybody realize how much of a problem it is, even though it looks like a small piece of net on a beach, because that is the most amount of access a lot of us will get to ghost nets. They don't know what happens in the deep sea. They don't know how many entanglements happen and how problematic it is for some species like turtles or whale sharks. And there was a recent report that there was a ghost net in, I think, the lungs of a dolphin in Goa in one of their strandings. So it's pretty problematic. And if you don't know about this, if you don't care about the ocean, if you don't have access, then this is like um, even more difficult to relate to. So that was a challenge that I faced. And Tangle Seas is, it started as a project, but now we're converting it into a company of sorts, like sole proprietorship, where we would be getting involved with projects and, take up the impact campaign in a more serious way.
Okay, thanks. So, why don't you explain more about the issue of marine debris and fishing nets, particularly in India, where there's not much work being done regarding it?
Okay. So let's be honest, ghost nets are very boring. Who cares about, fishermen's gear and fishing gear? We already don't look at the sea as like it needs to be conserved because it needs to be protected rather because wait, let me just start this again. Okay. So I think the whole marine debris and ghost net problem is not documented or cared about enough in India because there is so much. We have such a huge coastline to begin with, and it is not glamorous enough to get proper funding. It's not glamorous enough. There is no turtle project, tiger project, elephant project associated with it, and the amount of work that goes into it is a lot more because the nets as well as debris is found on the coast. It's found underwater, it is found at the surface, um, pelagic, benthic, coastal. So there's a lot of work to be done, and the amount of plastic and the amount of debris that enters the ocean is not stopping and doesn't look like it's going to reduce anytime soon. So it's just like, you do beach cleanups, and after 2 days, or it's the same thing again in places like Bombay, for example. So it's just it feels like a lost cause. Of course it is not, but there are issues like there is not enough information in the public domain to begin with. So you're just researching. Most of the projects have failed because research takes so long, and then there's nothing to um, there's nothing that you can carry forward. There is no information which is completed and you can be like, okay, this is my reference and I will do research on it. So that is another huge problem in a landscape like India.
What else is being done in India at a local and national level to tackle marine debris and coast nets?
What is being done? There are these policy researches going on, but marine debris is looked at as a um, global problem, much more like under UNEP and those sort of laws than something particular to India, because they have a lot of other stuff going on, and because of its geographic location also, um, India has a lot more issues to deal with, so it's not so much of a priority. What is being done is all these organizations like WWF, for example, that at the top of my head are conducting research on it, and but the problem here is that their reports are not public again, like I mentioned. So whatever work is happening, nobody really knows where that data is going.
Okay. Around policy also regarding marine debris. So can you talk about your work a little bit?
So I have been working with policy for awareness about marine debris and ghost nets in particular, because there's nothing happening. And over 4 years, we've worked with different stakeholders who are involved with it. And we are looking at policy for creating better awareness opportunities like workshops. Storage spaces should be better documented. They should be, if I want to use ghost nets to make maybe a bracelet, for example, I need to know where to get this net from, this kind of net. I should have a proper supply chain if I want to repurpose it into a product, for example. So, and that is just one example because I wanted to look at a commercial angle of it, if you get financial return from it. But repurposing can be done, decomposition can be done. That's a very scientific, long, short process, and it's not happened yet. But all of those things, if they have to happen, if you want to know how to get rid of ghost nets that are already existing, if it's not, because solving that problem at the source is also very far-fetched. So once whatever is there, there's enough to deal with already. And if you want to work on that, you need to know the whole chain of where the nets are collected, and they need to be segregated, they need to be cleaned because they have marine debris. There's a lot of underwater other stuff that is stuck in it. So just taking that up on a local and global level is very important. So and nets are a huge part of marine debris. Marine debris, there's a lot going on in a general plastic problem thing that's looked at globally, but we should look at nets separately and treat them a little differently than general marine debris. So that is what my work has been about. And also, I'm trying to provide as much data, like in whatever way, through interviews, through um, questionnaires, and through papers or whatever. And I'm trying to make it accessible to everybody else to kind of bridge the information gap that they're facing in this topic.
Okay. Talking about policy work. So recently you guys have been talking about a lot about the coastal regulation zone laws. Can you explain what are the laws exactly?
Right. So CRZ, or a coastal regulation zone, is something under Section 3 of the Environment Protection Act. And So it was first issued in February 1991, and what it means, which is pretty recent if you look at the timeline of events, and what it means is that the coastal areas of like creeks, sea, rivers, everything, backwaters, that get affected by tides, everything, there should be a distance of 500 meters from the high tide line and the land. So I will just read the definition for you. So, as per the CRZ rules, the coastal areas of creeks, seas, bays, rivers, and backwaters that get affected by tides up to 500 meters from the high tide line and the land area between the low tide line and the high tide line are declared as CRZ. So, whatever that might that sounds complicated, but what it means is that you're not allowed to build anything in that region, and whatever, ignoring the ecological impact and everything, keeping all of that aside, it is basic logic that if there is a flood situation or if something happens, um, every shack or everything in that area would obviously be located because you're so close to the sea. So that is what CRZ is in, as simplified as I could do it.
You also launched a ban the butt campaign. Can you just talk about why cigarette butts are such a big issue, especially for marine conservation?
So, Ban the Butt campaign was inspired by a similar initiative in Europe. And we looked at how they, I saw it on some Instagram post that had gone viral, and I thought that, oh, we should do something similar like that. And obviously, I took their permission because it was intellectual property. And after that, we collaborated with them, the Indian um, wing of the organization, and we did this campaign. So whenever we look at marine debris, we always look at it as straws and plastic bags because um, it fulfills somebody's agenda to say that, these particular things are problematic, and maybe Tetra packs are better to get recycled, easier to get recycled, and all of that. That's a whole corporate thing. It's like how carbon footprint works, so it's on those lines, and you would feel that straws and plastic bags are the only problem. They're not. Cigarette butts enter the ocean directly from, you won't realize that, but you just throw your cigarette butt, just flush it down, or you put it down your basins, but all those water channels lead to the sea, and it becomes very problematic because of the filter and the toxic effluents that are there in it. And it's just ignored because, again, it's not connected to the ocean easily. Like maybe, straws are there, and straws, because again, so we look at straws and plastic bags much more because we've seen footage of turtles being affected by, we've seen those graphic images, we've seen those graphic pictures, and we care about turtles, we care about this glamorous megafauna, and that is why this is supposed to be the only problem that we address. That's how conservation works. Plastic pollution is something that is overdone now. Microplastics is something that is overdone, and all these things are ignored in the back end. So we should just look at the statistics and realize how problematic cigarette butts actually are, and remember at the end of the day that every water channel leads to the ocean.
So one more question is that how can the layperson tackle the issue of help tackle the issue of marine debris, especially the people who are not into conservation?
Right. So, like I just mentioned, we don't realize the little things that we do might reach the sea. Like whenever we're going out, just not throwing your cigarette butts around, not disposing of your straws around, because one way or the other they are going to reach the ocean, and then it's going to circle back to us. Even if people would say that, I don't eat seafood, how is this going to happen to me? But those, if you look at studies, microplastics have entered our bloodstream also. They get into the air, they circle back, and bioaccumulation will happen one way or the other. So the mentality of, I've just thrown it and it's done, it's not my problem anymore, should stop, and we should be very careful with our purchasing habits and disposal habits, and just maybe get involved in cleanups more, and get involved in ocean related conversations and initiatives, because climate change is affecting the oceans the most and first. Yeah, just because we're away from it doesn't mean the oceans are not facing problems and need our attention.
Talking about climate change, so how important is ocean conservation in achieving our net zero goals and tackling climate change as a whole?
The ocean is seeing the effects of climate change first, right? Um, the coral bleaching is happening, so many other things are happening. Um, and it is and it's comparatively geographically also the larger statistic compared to maybe land mass, so it's a bigger problem than we think, and it is very important that uh, we look at ocean conservation in climate change.
Okay. So that was my last question. Thanks for your time. So I hope you enjoyed the episode.
Thank you so much for inviting me.